That's very much like my story of turning a light switch off, scramming the station.
Yeah.
So that's it.
We have a...
Oops.
How big were the transmitters that they need to be water cooled? How many watts?
FM, I think they were 20,000 watts, 30,000 watts.
Ours are just 6,000.
Yeah.
When I was in El Paso, Texas, I used to deal with the across-the-border station, 100,000 watt clear channel.
Yeah, you can light up, stuff. You can just hold an empty light bulb up in your hand and light that.
A lot of complaints from the people with bad dental work about not being able to stop the music.
We have a tower here in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and the only restriction on the tower is we can't use AC power. They won't let us run power to it. So everything we do up there has to be solar powered. So we're battling power issues up there.
Radio, so much fun.
How do they light it?
They
maybe direct current.
Use solar power.
I've never looked at
but
night
only
to
during
see if
the
it's
day.
lighted.
D cells, guys, D cells.
I'll report back to you if it's lighted at night, Mark, and if it's not, we're going to have to rig something up. But it's very,
what are all
very
these tower
high
climbing bills? Oh, we got to change
Yeah.
the batteries.
There's half a dozen other towers around it that are way taller.
24-hour shifts.
They're all
of
lighted
climbers
up.
with Luma sticks, those cracking light up sticks.
Well, we just had all of ours relit with the daylight and night lights so that we didn't have to worry about the orange and white paint, the FAA paint.
Well, you'll still be on when the EMP comes through and shuts down all the digital circuits.
Thanks.
Only AM radio.
Can you
will
imagine
survive.
what a mess life is going to be if we get...
It's unbelievable.
You said when, not if, Bill.
Well, we could get a coronal mass ejection that could take a lot of communications out.
Yeah.
It's CME.
Right. All the Morse ticking machines will go catch on fire. Not Morse code. What do they call them?
The teletypes.
Telegraphs. Telegraphs will
Yeah.
catch on fire.
Yeah.
And they used to
Yeah,
run
that was the
barbed wire.
When I was doing the research, it turned out that there are, in the last couple of millennia, have been ones that were 10 to 100 times more than the Carrington event. So that should make you feel better. Oh.
Just remember to have some film stock laying around so that you can have yourself x-rayed automatically.
Yeah.
Alex, we were talking about who's hosting and who's reading today because I don't think we had filled out. Do you have any preferences?
I don't have a preference. Do you want me to host or do you want to host?
You want to host? I'll read if
Okay.
I
Sounds
host
good.
and Courtney will read. But yeah, go ahead and host.
Okay.
Courtney, you're off the hook. You can just answer questions.
Hey,
in
thank
your
you. Thank you
Always
very much.
inimitable style.
I'll go try and look up Paul's waterproof.
I'm sure everybody in the
earbuds.
back end knows that I'm now hosting. I'm hosting. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
First one comes today from Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York. And he says, for people who have an aversion to earbuds, what do you think of bone conduction headphones versus custom ear mold IEMs, in-ear monitors, for on-camera production?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I vastly prefer the bone conduction headphones. And what I use is something called H2O audio. Now, they're designed for swimming. I do a lot of swimming, but they would be great also in a production setting. If you're ticklish, they'll tickle your ears if you have the volume up too high.
Good, Courtney.
Good. We're good.
Yeah, I don't know about the H2O. I kind of, if you're on air production, if you're on camera, I prefer something like an in-ear monitor that is more or less invisible. You can see mine in here, and I only have it in one ear. I think it looks more professional than the ones that are going to be sitting on your temples. Here, let's take a look at these are Paul's H2O. I think they look something like that. But they sit in front of your ear, I think, for bone conduction. So I think it looks a little more professional if you don't have something, resting on your temples. And plus the fact that there's leakage, and especially if you're in a broadcast situation where you've got maybe a producer talking to you in your ear, you don't want to ever hear that coming in over your lavalier microphone or something. If it's pretty close to that, it can hear it if it's a quiet situation. So it's best to keep it those secret sounds plugged inside your ear so that it doesn't leak out to the real world.
Yeah, Mickey said that bone conduction monitors are not discreet enough for on-camera talent use. They also do not perform well in medium to high SPL environments, which I totally agree with. It is not really a great. It will look odd, number one, and one of our key cardinal rules is don't be weird when you're doing production. So, I know that Portland wants to be weird all the time, but and they can keep it there. But we need to try to make it work. So anyway, so they look odd. They won't work as well, not nearly as well in a loud environment, and they will leak into your mics. And so all of those things would lead me to believe. Now, I think they're great for comms. One of the problems with them is almost all the bone conduction are Bluetooth only. I don't know if I've seen one that is wired. So I wouldn't recommend it. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. Has anyone used the UAD SSL 4000 plugin? I have the BrainWorks version along with Waves. Are there any sonic differences?
I have not. I haven't used it. I will say that Wednesdays, for deep audio questions, I would really recommend Wednesdays for those kinds of questions about a specific plugin or other things like that. We can definitely answer some of the audio stuff, but if you're looking for something on a specific plugin, I would recommend that. Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. What is Appsumo? Is it a reliable source of apps, including some with AI for your production business? And he's got a link there to Appsumo.
There you go, Paul.
Yeah, I can't make up my mind about Appsumo, so I thought I'd throw it out to the panel to take a look at it. It's basically they curate apps. They go around and they try to find the best apps, and then a lot of these apps are in gestation and they become much bigger later on. So a lot of these apps are like in beta or just starting out. Some of them have become very successful.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I've never heard of it until your question here, Paul. It looks like an aggregator. Sorry, let me get rid of this. That has multiple software from multiple different suppliers, and they offer a deal. I'm not sure whether they get some type. They're not that big a deal on a lot of these. And apparently there's a subscription involved to Appsumo, so that you pay a price. It's kind of like, like Costco, where it's a warehouse pricing for software, so that you get a discount. You get it a little bit cheaper than you would if you subscribe to the software yourself. I'd worry about that if they're going to initiate a subscription to subscription software. Because if they're the ones holding the subscription and they're relicensing it to you or something, and they go under, what happens to your subscription? Is it with you? Do they renew it or do you renew it? A lot of questions I have.
Go, Bill.
It smacks to me of plug-in bundles, which we used to see a lot of in the early days. At least it seemed to me they were hugely popular 10 to 15 years ago, and I'm seeing a lot of them coming up now. That is typically where somebody goes out to all these manufacturers of plugins and they get 20, 30, 50, 100 plugins, and they put it in a bundle and say, all of these can be yours for only $49.95. In every case, in my early days when I explored those, it turns out that maybe after 6 months I had one left that I was using, and the rest of them just sat clogging up space on my hard drive for a long time because the quality was always extraordinarily variable, which means that for every 10 that were well-coded, there seemed to be 10 that were obvious first-time coders things, and they just really wanted to put it together with the pitch that you get tons, not that you get good. So I'm always leery of those kind of offers. That's just how I view it.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Craig McFarland in Boston, Massachusetts. What are your thoughts on the soon-to-ship Kickstarter UniFi Drive UT2, a portable NAS aimed at creators? And he's got a Kickstarter link there.
Good, Paul.
Yeah, I looked at this thing, and I don't get it. It's a tiny little drive. How are you going to get multiple drives in there unless you use
Well, to be a NAS, it doesn't technically have to be a. I mean, it doesn't
have to be multiple drives.
No, but it is a. Yeah, Mickey said a battery powered data storage solution. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, I think now I think that if it's powered, I think the advantage of it, maybe that if you needed something really quickly and you need to pull something off of our network, it would make sense. I can't imagine using this. I get that, someone, and obviously there's people who have thought that this was a good enough idea because they've signed up for it, but I can't imagine using a drive like this in production. Go ahead, Courtney.
It's NAS on the run.
Yeah.
Well, in production, I might see it. There are certain situations where you want to have an editor if you're doing late-breaking news, or I have a corporate client who we do news releases for them, and the editor is there on the set and has access, and they edit. The copy is edited. We shoot it. It goes directly to the editor. The editor edits it and shoots it up to the website immediately. So several people have to have access to it for approvals at the last minute out on location. So in a situation like that, I could see it, or as a situation where you want to offload, you're shooting in production and you want to offload the camera dailies directly to a non-cloud-based NAS that several people might have access to. But putting it on and taking it off the network might be problematic for sharing it with people. It'd be better to have a cloud-based solution for that. And it probably just has 2 NVMe drives in it and a battery power supply, but it probably has an outboard power to plug it in. It keeps it charged so that the battery works kind of like a UPS. But I don't think they're going to use striped RAID in it, though.
Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. I guess Unity is getting into the NAS business. How will their solution stack up to Synology? Ubiquity is calling it, quote, magically simple, and they've got a link to it.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it's too new to evaluate, but it'd be hard to imagine something better than the Synology NAS that I have. I have a Synology in 2 different locations. And they're going to have to drag race to catch up with Synology, in my opinion. I really haven't drilled down into it.
We'll have to see how it goes. Next question.
David Brady in New York City. A few weeks ago, we had a high-level live stream come to a grinding halt. Streaming was handled via Zoom's built-in cloud encoder, and the target was to Vimeo. What monitoring can be done with cloud-to-cloud streaming?
There's a bunch of things there that I would look at. I think that Vimeo is a really powerful corporate platform, but you do have to know that it's not as stable as some of the other options. And so the infrastructure that backs it up doesn't inherently have a lot of redundancy. So there are things that can go wrong with that setup. So when it really matters, there are other platforms like Akamai and others that you may want to think about that are going to have those. They're going to be more reliable, but more expensive than Vimeo. So I think at some point when you say high-level live stream, you might want to think about what that means and whether Vimeo is the right solution for that. I think it's good as a general corporate live streaming solution, and they're probably the most accessible for corporations. But the back end is not as redundant as some of the other options. It's hard to tell what happens specifically with Zoom sending it in. James Haldane says in the chat, Vimeo can have issues and stop the stream if too many packets are lost. So something may have happened on the way there, and Vimeo stalled out. And that is something that you want to be careful of, and knowing what the platform is going to do when it doesn't get the bits that it's expecting. And it sounds like it might have just turned off. Another thing to think about is whether you have a primary and a backup encode. So sometimes you can encode this. And again, I also wouldn't necessarily use, I wouldn't typically, for a high profile event, as a general run-of-mill, we did it for a long time, using Zoom's built-in encoder, cloud encoder, makes sense. It's easy. You turn it on, you point it at something. If someone starts saying, I'm going to do a high-level event with Zoom, I immediately start shifting gears to what I would call production-ready tools, like really, hardened tools to send things out. I think that Zoom has to have the feature that it has, but it's not the same as having a more dedicated encoding solution. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I always look back at and say, what did they build this thing for in the first place, and what are they using it for now? And it's not to say that a company's platform can't be changed over the course of the time. Companies have done it. But Vimeo was originally started out as a content distribution network. You were supposed to put your content up there. It was brilliant for me personally. The reason I've been using it for, I think, 14 years now, is that once you had a piece of content on Vimeo, it was incredibly easy to embed it in websites. There were a lot of tools for getting around corporate networks who used to stop us from doing things like YouTube links because they didn't want their employees watching too much YouTube content while they should be productive at work. So those things were in the early days kind of how I saw Vimeo as a tool. Of course, they did add more live streaming options, and they've gone in that direction. But I think the original infrastructure was coded to do that kind of work. Again, it's not that they can't make the turn, but at some point, a company gets so big with the infrastructure they've originally built that it's hard to get them off into something new.
Yeah, I think that, what the live portion of Vimeo is live stream. It used to be called live stream a long time ago. And they kind of cobbled something together, in my opinion, and then never went back and rewrote it. There were a lot of, I know that we had, a fair number of challenges with live stream, in the past that look exactly like the trouble you're having there. So again, and we definitely used it for things, and I think that the convenience of it working 99% of the time may work fine. And I think as a general corporate solution, I often tell people Vimeo is the best solution for that. If you're looking for one that you can control access, you can build OTT apps, you can do a lot of other things with it, but you have to know what comes with it is a streaming infrastructure that is not probably as redundant as I would make it if I suddenly worried about it working 100% of the time, or 99.999, the 5 nines, 8 nines, 9 nines, that kind of thing. Vimeo is not that solution. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. What is the panel's thoughts on hearing support available for iPod Pros 2, now available on iOS 18.1?
Go ahead, Bill.
So, I think Apple is serious about trying to get into the assisted hearing marketplace. They've been doing research on that for a long time. They realize that a lot of us are getting older and have hearing challenges. And I think they also understood that there was a huge opportunity because the hearing aid market, the traditional medical hearing aid market, got so expensive. I mean, you go in for a set of top-line hearing aids now, and you're talking about, you can get close to $10,000 for those. Some people can afford that, but there are a lot of people with hearing issues that can't afford that. So I think Apple's making a really smart play here. They have technology that can be assistive, particularly below the very difficult hearing challenges that some people have, where you really do need to get into the medical system for diagnosis and specific things. But I just see them getting better and better and better, and I think Apple, when they get into a market like this, they're going through the regulatory hoops to jump through to get them done. And this recent regulation changed where OTC, over-the-counter hearing aids, could be used with technology that is pretty close to the original medical grade hearing aid thing. I think they have a huge market ahead of them, and I think they'll do really well with it, particularly since huge numbers of people already have experienced with their assistive listening through their AirPods, which are very popular.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think they might do okay. They're going to be competing, though, down in the dregs of all the as seen on TV, they used to sell the little things that would go in your pocket and have a wire up for people that you could buy for $100, that are not licensed by an audiologist or not prescribed, but allow assistive hearing for those that can't afford, or don't have a medical plan that includes hearing aids. So they'll be competing in that kind of market. And now that they've opened it up, that everybody with wireless earbuds they're going to be competing against. And almost all wireless earbuds now have the ability, they have digital signal processors kind of built into them so that they can tailor the sound to your hearing deficiency. The question that I have is that when you go to an audiologist and have custom hearing aids made, they test your hearing at all the different frequencies with very, very low samples of tones in your ears, and they put you in a soundproof booth. And I wonder how that they're going to, create this profile for your hearing in the Apple AirPods that is good enough in their testing software, that is going to be good enough. Do you have a quiet enough room to test with those really low-level frequencies? And those are calibrated, too. I assume they have some way of calibrating them to know where your hearing deficiencies are and plot them so that they can then tailor the frequency response of your earbuds to your hearing loss. So whether it works or not is one big question, but obviously it will help a lot of people out even if they don't tailor it specifically to their hearing.
Yeah, I think that it's an added feature that Apple's added that doesn't need to. It's many things that those headsets do. I had gone away from AirPod Pros and actually bought another pair, and I'm not buying them as a hearing aid. I'm buying them because Apple's now promoting them as something that is a hearing protection. So basically it will use that curve that you did to also lower by 25 to 30 dB your exterior sounds. If you go to a concert or something like that, one of my big complaints about wearing earplugs at concerts is everything sounds muffled. And so I'm planning to test these ones to see how they work. But their reduction is about the same as most of the earplugs, unless you're going to start putting something over your ears when you go to a concert. And so I think that Apple is looking at all the different things that you could use these with, and then solving many of those problems. And I think that they're kind of competing with folks that do something else. But I think the other side of it is it's Apple, and they're really just trying to sell this to Apple users, which they have a lot of. So these are really built not so much for the general purpose person who wants to replace their hearing aids, but for Apple users who want to use an Apple product to replace their hearing aids. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, someone we know was in a car accident and the airbags exploded in the car. And after that accident, he couldn't hear. So he got the new AirPods Pro 2, and he was able to hear right off the bat. I mean, he's obviously going to go to therapy to get his ears fixed and everything.
I think that one of the big advantages of the AirPod as well is it's so well known that it doesn't have some social stigma to it. People are wearing them all the time. I do think we're going to get to a point where when someone has the earpiece in, you just don't know whether they're listening or not listening, or how they're using the product, because there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of AirPods, that are wearing it. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. Thoughts on Microsoft restarting 3 Mile Island, the electrical requirements of AI, and the education of end users of how much energy they use. For example, asking ChatGPT a math question rather than using a calculator is orders of magnitude more power consuming.
Go ahead, Mark.
So the AI is using a lot of energy. Constellation is the group that's going to be restarting 3 Mile Island. They've been working with Microsoft. Microsoft has basically cut a deal to buy 20 years of power ahead of time, and that will fund the $1.5 billion worth of renovations.
It's easier to do that than to build your own power plant because of the regulations.
Think of the investments and the insurance when you're a software company of running a nuclear power plant.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Well, my question, I'm not sure exactly what portion of the AI consumes so much power, whether it's training the model, which you do. I'm not sure how often they train that model, retrain that model, but we know that, GPT will go from 3 to 3.5 will go up a point number about every 6 months or so. Now, is that time between there all done for training? Are they training it on a daily basis? Are they adding stuff? Or does the interface with the user, do the user queries consume a lot?
My understanding is it's the interface to the user. Like that's
Right.
actually the issue.
The interface to the user. So if they're talking about having local AI in the new phones from Apple and a number of other manufacturers having a onboard GPU or NPU for processing neural networks, will they download the model into the phone and most of that power will be consumed in your phone? Or will it still be consuming lots of power as they start to distribute this AI?
I think the problem is that us using it is only a small part of how AI is being used. so there's just so many industrial uses to it that I think it's going to be, and I think everyone's kind of bracing for there's going to be a lot more of it, they're going to be, this is definitely, we're in a race, and I think that they're just running out of options as far as how to generate more power quickly. I think that's the issue. So,
does it consume as much power as crypto mining?
I just don't think as many people were doing it. You have 100 million people that are using ChatGPT. So that's just in the United States. Next question.
Next question comes from Douglas Carmichael. When would an ultra low latency stream be better than a low latency stream?
I'll say that almost never. So as you lower the latency of your stream, you are lowering the resilience of it. So there's a buffer there, and that buffer is making sure that you see every frame. Where you see ultra low latency, or I would say real time, I would call anything under 250 milliseconds real time. Is when you have two-way conversation. So if you want to talk to someone, that's when you're using WebRTC. We're using Zoom here to talk to each other right now. And if you were in the Zoom meeting, which we used to do, you would see us to hear. And for the most part, it works pretty well if we all have good connections. But even we start to see things if someone shows up in a real-time environment with Wi-Fi, things start to break up because there is no room for error. Like literally just the Wi-Fi looking at another device is something that's problematic. So I think that's the issue, is that as you lower that latency, you're lowering the stability. Every little thing matters, and it's just a much more difficult thing to do at a high quality, especially when you start talking about higher resolutions and higher quality, larger use of bandwidth. You really want those buffers to protect you. A lot of people get into this low latency, and generally it's driven because most of the chat functions in most social networks are horrible, almost unusable. So because of that, they want to do it in real time because they can't figure any other way to do it. But your question was asked at 7:06, and we are now at 7:24. So the latency of your question was 18 minutes. So we got a lot of room in there to work. So that's the distinction there. Go ahead, Courtney.
For musical, during the pandemic where we couldn't all be in the same room at the same time, musical collaboration with multiple people contributing to trying to play in sync with each other, that would be the only time ultra low latency probably would be required, so that the timing precision between all those that are connected, which might be in different cities, different distances away, would make a difference, as we've all seen when we try to sing Happy Birthday here on Office Hours.
Yeah, we can't even get that working.
We cannot get that to work, even with the low latency that Zoom has. So, yeah, musical collaboration, anything else that would require, really close timing within, 10 to 20 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds. I don't think you're going to get to that level of latency if you're going to go over the internet, with a private
over the internet, it's under 200, 150 is really
high. You're never going to get to that low latency unless you're directly connected over a private network.
Yeah, we had a client, James Haldane says, we had a client with a dedicated fiber connection for our stream, as they thought that YouTube wouldn't be 12 seconds behind if they had got a faster connection, but they didn't realize YouTube is, that buffer, that delay is actually on the other end. It's the buffer that, if you open up Stats for Geeks, so if you hold, I think it's going to hold down the control, or there's, you can get Stats for Geeks on YouTube, you'll see this thing where you'll see the bandwidth usage, and you'll see a little spike and then nothing, and a spike and then nothing. That's because if you have a fast connection, it's pulling all the next segments down and then waiting to hand them to you in real time. So it's there to make sure that you have a smooth experience, because people will leave very quickly if they don't. Next question.
Ben Taylor in Washington, D.C. is up next. My federal production shop has been using the Canon 5D, currently the Mark IV DSLR, since 2011. Considering that it still serves our purposes well enough, has there been a suitable replacement or upgrade you'd recommend?
Good, Mark.
I think that their next line of Canons is the R series, but you're going to have to buy all new glass for that. And if you move the camera to Sony, then again, you're going to need to buy new glass. So the real investment are the lenses.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, back in the early days, it was that chip. They really hit a home run there by accident, kind of, if the stories that I read at the time were correct, that their Digic, 1 processor, some engineer in the back end of Canon figured out they could get 30 frames a second out of it, and nobody else had before. So it had a really good big sensor, and it had this processor that could actually process and feed video frames appropriately, and so it revolutionized everything, and that's why we suddenly got all those DSLR-shaped cameras and people were shooting on them, including myself, a huge boon to my business. Nowadays, I don't think that processing issue is there for any of these. The silicon has gotten so fast that you can put that into anything, so there's all sorts of other now options, including down to those little pan-tilt zoom cameras and things like that process video just fine for feed to the web. So I do think that technology, the Canon kind of still camera being the smart choice, is pretty much faded away now, and all these other choices become possible for you. So now the question is, do you need to get your shop out of that old form factor, or is there going to be coming a time, and I'm going to go to what Mark said before, I'm more concerned about the fact that you're building and continuing a chain on a camera that is pretty much gone from Canon's top-of-the-list inventory. They've moved entirely to that R-series stuff, and I think you're dragging around something that's 10 years old in tech equipment, and more than 10 years old. That's always a little iffy in my book. Things have gotten a lot better since then.
Yeah, Biggie said that a small ENG cinema camera like a Canon 300 or a Sony FX6 might be a good step up. I will say there are very few cameras that have raised my blood pressure as high as the Canon video series, the 100s, the 300s, the 500s. It's my swear quotient goes so high. The interface is so bad. Like the image is great. The interface, someone should be brought in to fix that. Mickey also said moving from shooting video on a stills camera to proper video camera will be life changing to you. Yeah, especially, I think that is the case. Is that you want to really think about the form factor as well. Go ahead, Courtney.
And also on those original 5D series DSLRs, there was that tariff issue that limited the length of time you could shoot video to 30 minutes or less, because they had when you imported that camera, there was a different tariff import duty for still cameras versus video cameras. So they purposely limited it. Besides the heat problems, they purposely limited the time that you could record video to 30 minutes to avoid having to pay the tariff as a video camera. Now, they may have skirted that issue by now, because there are a lot of DSLRs that shoot video longer than 30 minutes. So maybe they eliminated that particular tariff in the years since then, or maybe they've found some other way around it. But that's another limitation to think of. And the newer, especially the video cameras, the C100, like the ones that Alex hates the menu system on, will skirt those issues because they're imported as video cameras rather than still DSLR.
Yeah, Mickey pointed out that I didn't like the Sony interfaces either. I still don't like the Sony interfaces that much. It's just that the autofocus and the color, science and everything else makes up for the fact that it is considerably. I would say the Sony is twice, maybe 4 times as good as the Canon interface, and about half as good as the Blackmagic interface. The Blackmagic interface is, I think, the gold standard for a camera interface that has those. You just want to have a screen that lets you figure out what you're doing and not all these weird little dials, and I'm going to deal with a whole bunch of it's just, it's so hard. Anyway, I think that what I would recommend is really looking hard at the FX6s. I think that's what Mickey had brought up there. But the FX6s, I think, are probably what, if I was going to pick something that's going to last for a while down the road, and you're doing, I'm assuming because you're still using these 5Ds, you're using these for interviews and for behind the scenes and how-tos and everything else. And what you're going to find is that form factor works really well. That you're probably doing the kind of shooting that wants to have autofocus. And the Sonys, I think, are the best autofocus tools out there. If you're not using autofocus, I might look at some of the Blackmagic tools. I think that the record functions and the way record works and the ProRes and so on and so forth on the Blackmagic cameras, I like better. And the ability to work with them and have a switcher be able to shade them, start record, end record, that type of thing. If you're doing any kind of multi-camera work, I think that leans towards the Blackmagic. So as we often say, it depends. But feel free to ask us more questions and tell us exactly how you're using the cameras, and we might be able to dial that in a little bit. Next question.
Gabrielle Anastasia Mastera in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Where are photos stored on your iPhone? With the new iPhone, can you connect a USB drive and download the photos?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, you can. Let me see if I can pull up here. I don't know if it's going to come. There we go. So here's my phone, and if I go just click on the camera thing, there's a little square down in the bottom left corner, and you click on that, and you get into your photo library. Here's the export little button here, so you can decide who you're going to send it to and how to get it out of there. So it's just a couple of taps to get things out. If you're asking where in the memory, I mean, it's just the general memory chip that has all that stuff in it. But that's the quick way to get access to either photos or video. They'll all go into your photos library, and it's accessible through that little camera thing and clicking on the square in the lower left.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. If you want to get to your files folder, you just click on files. It brings up all your files and photos. And if you want to connect a USB drive, there's a real good one made by Samsung. It uses USB-C. It's 256 gigabytes, and it has an 11 seconds with up to 400 megabit read speeds. Waterproof also.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Corelli Johannesdottir in Fort Duchesne, Utah. I have an ATEM Extreme, but the iPhone isn't working when plugged into the extra USB, so it isn't streaming right. What's wrong? And he also notes I have an ATEM KVM, A10, A-T-E-M, KVM, an extender on the iPhone. It works great plugged into, but it doesn't have extra USB ports.
Still trying to follow what you're doing there. So what I'm assuming you're doing here is that you're trying to stream from you're trying to use the phone as your internet connection to stream from your ATEM. So the ATEMs have this capability of, if they see a cellular phone, you can theoretically connect to it and make it actually work. But then you said that you also have the A10 KVM extender on the phone. So if you're connecting the phone to the A10 and the A10 to the ATEM, there's all kinds of problems there. It may not even, the ATEM may not do it. So I guess the question for you, I know that we keep on trying to figure this out, but are you directly connecting the phone to the switcher? So are you plugging it into the phone directly in, and has it worked before? Because as Mickey points out, if you're tethering for internet connectivity, you make sure the provider is not throttling you. it may not. There's a lot of different versions of your account, and they may not let you do that. So have you been capable of doing that in the past? Go ahead, Mark.
Maybe I'm oversimplifying this, but I don't think the USB port on the ATEM will import data. I think it's just
no. It's not. It's not importing data. I think he's trying to stream. He's trying to use the phone as a way to. So some of the cameras and the ATEMs you plug the phone in, and it tethers the phone to the, and it uses it as a modem.
Couldn't you just hook up a USB-C or a Lightning to HDMI and go?
No, that's what he's. Well, he's not trying to get the video of the phone into the switcher. He's trying to use the phone to stream. I'm assuming that's what he's trying to do here. So he's trying to, and in that environment, I don't think that he can. I think
use the phone as a hotspot.
If he's going through a KVM, that's not going to work. If you got to plug the phone directly into the USB because it won't handshake correctly. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you hit it, I think, on the nose. I think most phones can only handle one type of extension plugged into the USB port at a time, and it's that A10 KVM that is intercepting those signals and it is blocking the communications between the ATEM and the phone, and is not going to let you use it as a streaming device. So try taking that A10 out of the loop and plug it directly into a USB-C cable to the ATEM, and then see if it works, and just use the phone to touchscreen on the phone. And actually, once you set it up, the ATEM will take over controlling of the streaming, but you're going to not be able to use a KVM to control it.
Yeah, and David Brady says, check the ATEM streaming profile. I would use low. So yeah, with your cell phone, I would only use a cell phone to stream from your ATEM as we talk about PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. Using the phone to stream is somewhere between emergency and don't. It's not, don't use it any higher up in that chain. Next question.
Next one, Gabriela Mastiera is back from Sault Ste. Marie with, what is your average latency with YouTube live streaming? How can you make it lower? Does latency matter here for a show like this where the viewer doesn't have to be here or in sync to drop questions?
Yeah, so I think that our latency, I think we're in normal latency, and that would be 20 seconds. I think that you could go to low latency, and it would be 9 to 11 seconds, I think. And then you go to ultra low latency, and that will lower the quality of the live stream, and lower the results, lower the stability, which we don't do. I don't really think it matters that much. I do think that it is. I think that the only place that it does affect it, and why I've thought about moving to low latency, but right now I'm worried about quality, but is the chat. The chat, it makes it easier for people to chat in real time because they're hearing the questions. So if we move through questions very quickly, it's hard for people to keep up or make comments on it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to this. I was going to say maybe if Alex does, is that does it make a difference in the type of encoding that you're sending to YouTube? I know they're going to re-encode it for multiple bit rates anyway, but if you upload it as H.264 or H.265, and depending upon, is there a flavor of compression that YouTube prefers to see that it will speed up its re-encoding?
I don't know if it speeds it up. I don't think that it necessarily speeds it up. You get a higher quality. One thing we've learned is that if we go over 1080p, so if we stream 4K, which we're starting to do with Monday nights, and we will be doing with this show probably within the next couple of weeks, that it looks dramatically sharper. Even if we're sending 1080p solutions, 1080p from us into the encode, everything looks sharper. So because we think that it's being put on a different pipeline. So that's something to kind of take into account as well.
But I think a higher bit rate takes less encoding and decoding time, right? So is that
it does, but like for instance, if you go to ultra low latency, it's giving you a really low. It's just jamming your I think it's like 640, or it's 360p. Like it's really low.
So it's
low
reducing
resolution.
the resolution,
Yeah, to try to give you that real time experience. Next question.
Harold Williams, in Portsmouth, Virginia, says, I'd like to use the concept of a teleprompter in portrait photography. What if the subject looked into a see-through mirror instead? Would this help them with their facial expressions?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think not. And I'm going to explain why. So I think famously I've said a lot of, I go do a lot of photography, still photography at Comic-Con every year. And it's really interesting because I have a very short time with people who have spent a lot of time putting their costumes together, things like that. And over the years, I've learned that there's kind of 3 stages to approaching somebody about a portrait shot. I have the extreme circumstances. I've only got 5 minutes with them, maybe if I'm lucky. That's a little different than portrait photography, but first, just connection, meeting them, getting to know them a little bit. The second is establishing some sort of rapport. And the third part of it is to get that person to relax and be who they want to be right there, who you think they can be based on the photo you're taking. To do that in a short period of time is very intense. To do it for real portraiture, the photographer and the subject, you have to get that trust built. And looking at a teleprompter at yourself is one of the most distancing things I have ever encountered. When I go out for corporate executives, when I'm shooting video and I try to get them to look natural on camera, it is such a battle, particularly if they can see themselves, because all of a sudden they're in their head saying, oh gosh, I need to turn this way or that. That means they are not connecting with me and they are not connecting with the camera and they are not revealing themselves. They're in their head judging how they look, which is a terrible place and ends up with really stiff, uncomfortable portraits. The whole game in photographing people for me is that rapport, to get them to forget that they're there, to get them to engage with me, and then to gently try to figure out how to get them to access feelings, memories of things. And there's a lot of little techniques. You know, I often ask them about pets or their childhood or things like that, just to put them in a mental state where they're comfortable and relaxed. They know what they're talking about. It's something that it's important to them. You know, if they've got a hobby they love, then all of a sudden, if you can get them in that mental space, everything resolves for the camera. So the last thing I try to use is some sort of teleprompter-ish kind of thing to let them see themselves for a portrait.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Also, there's another weird psychological thing that takes place because most people are used to seeing themselves in a mirror. So they're looking at a mirror image of their actual visage so that they're used to saying, oh, that mole is usually on the other side,
Right.
Or they think they have a good side and a bad side. I photograph better from the right, because I don't like the way my left side looks. And if you're presenting them with a mirror where there's no monitors involved, then they will feel, they will see an image that they're normally used to seeing in the mirror, and that may change the way they hold their head, and they may actually look better from another angle, but they've never seen themselves from the other angle because they always are looking at that mirror reflection. With a teleprompter, actually, which has the monitor in it and has the image reversed in the monitor, that way they're seeing a real image, and it makes some people uncomfortable if you're using a teleprompter to show them because they're not used to seeing a real image of themselves, non-reversed, in the flesh. So that looks like a mirror image, but is actually the opposite of what they would see as a mirror image. So you have to deal with that little psychological difference. And there's a lot of actors I've worked with that will bring a mirror out and look at it and goes, no, this lighting is all wrong. The key light needs to be over there, not over here. I'm not going to mention any initials like BS.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, mirror's not a good idea. My favorite lens for shooting portraits is about a 105 millimeter with bokeh, with backlighting, maybe the sun as a backlight, and not having the subject be self-conscious.
Yeah, the other thing is you're shooting through glass and through a mirror, and if you're doing something for portraits, we can get away with it in video because the resolution is much lower than stills. And so, but as you start getting to the higher resolution, shooting through glass, I know a lot of portrait photographers that won't even put a UV filter on the front of their lens because they're like, why would I have a $3,000 lens and then put a little piece of plastic or a little piece of glass in front of it that isn't anywhere near the same optic level as what was just there. So I think that's the challenge that you have there. So you want to think through that as well. So I think on many levels I probably wouldn't do it. I will say that we have found that the quote-unquote interrotron process definitely affects how someone reacts to somebody else. Their eyes converge differently. They have this human mirroring thing that happens when they're talking to someone. There's a certain excitement level. So the interrotron of looking at somebody else while they're doing it, we have found to be very effective. Looking at themselves, not as much. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. I've heard the phrase edge caches are primed in reference to content distribution network before an event. What does that mean?
So typically what that is when you're talking about an edge cache, you have a core, you have so you have your the primary server that has the footage. So if you're streaming, you've got an ingest server, and that is, so the stream goes into there, and then it ends up possibly through some other servers. It ends up in your in the server that's going to be your origin server. This is the origin. This holds all the things, and it's going to send them out. Now, what it has is edge that's out here like this. Now, this might be one layer of edge that it goes out to, so it's sending it out to these. But it can also be, these could have more, depending on how large the network is, that they can have their own group of small servers. Now, what's interesting about these are small servers, and they sit all over the world typically. And what happens is that there is when you do HLS is not really streaming. It's passing segments and getting rid of them very quickly. If you let them stay there for very long, their time to life. If their time to life is, or time to die, or the or time of life, if they stayed on the server for very long, the server would fill up, and then it gets really expensive to have a lot of storage on these little edge servers. And so what happens is the way HLS works is that I'm a user out here, and I make a request, to the website, right? It figures out what's the closest one to me that's there and that has the bit, and so I grab onto it. Now, once I've grabbed onto it, the first person that grabs onto it, it goes back to the origin. But the second person that grabs onto it, if it's within the time that it's still the time of life for that segment, they get that segment from the edge. They don't have to go back to the origin because they already have it on the server. So as more and more people are looking at it, they're getting it from the edge and not from the origin, and that takes a lot of pressure off the origin. That way, one computer doesn't have to serve everybody all those bits. The origin is only sending bits out to the edge where there's new requests that haven't been, they've hit that server, and sometimes it can be, if it's multi-layered, this one got a request from one of these three, and so this person came in and it got to here. This person came in and got in it, but it only has to go to here. It doesn't have to go back to the origin. What you're trying to do is protect the origin. If too many people ask for the same thing from the origin, I had a show where somebody. They promoted it really heavily without doing what you're saying, priming the edges and big things like YouTube don't really need this. This is but when you're dealing with a smaller CDN or you're building your own CDN, you need time for that to kind of ramp up and make sure that there's stuff on the edge so that not all the requests go back to the origin. Instead, they went live and immediately did something that got in front of 400,000 people really, really fast. And boom, the origin, I was surprised it got to 15,000 requests before it melted. So it can't handle, one server can't handle that many requests. And so the whole idea behind a CDN is to spread that out. And so HLS makes that possible. It's why so many people use HLS, is that it makes it possible because it's just throwing these segments out onto those edges. And those segments are typically between 1 second segments. So the GOP, the group of frames, might be a 1 or 2 second GOP. And then the segment oftentimes is a collection of GOPs. So you might have 3 GOPs inside of a 1 segment. So that would be a 2 second GOP and a 6 second segment. The longer the segments, the less of them have to be sitting on the network. So a lot of times, if you think there's going to be a lot of people watching, millions of people, and you're not YouTube, you oftentimes start to think about, well, let's use 6 second GOPs because it actually, there's a whole bunch of things. The data trail as well as the storage is less for when the segments are larger. So those are the kind of things you think about. But when you talk about priming the edge, typically it's getting those bits out to the edge. And it's also why a lot of us are in the habit of starting a stream a little bit before the show. Again, for this show, it doesn't matter. For YouTube, it doesn't matter. But when you're dealing with other networks, you oftentimes think about a pre-show of 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 10 minutes. That's all part of warming that edge up. And YouTube does a little of this for you automatically. Like the notifications for a live event usually take 3 to 5 minutes to get to everybody. They don't all go out. They don't all get the same email at the same time. So YouTube is doing some of that on its own. Next question.
Gabriela Estacia Mestiero is back from Sault Ste. Marie with this one. And ATEM is only a switcher option. iPhones want to be wireless NDI HX or too far away for HDMI. What's the cheapest solution to connect NDI from the iPhones to the ATEM? And please don't try to change a switcher that can't be changed is not the question.
That's fine. I don't know what the least expensive versions of these are. BirdDog makes a variety of these. Magewell makes them. A lot of them are. When you're talking about NDI to it depends on also NDI to HDMI or NDI to SDI. But a lot of these are in the kind of the $400 or $500. $400 or $500 range if you're trying to use NDI. If you're trying to convert NDI to one of these things, that's about what you're going to pay. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, but I'm not even sure if those NDI to HDMI converters will even work with HX, because aren't those designed for the regular non-HX, non-compressed version of NDI, or will it accept the H.264 or the HX version?
I think a lot of the Magewells, will take whatever kind of NDI that you send. ZowieTech makes one, I think, it says an encoder and decoder, so I don't know. Because remember that a lot of them also have to pay the licensing fees, so that also adds to the cost of it. I'm answering the question as I've been told not to vary from the answer from the question. Don't talk about extra switchers or anything else. So what I would say is that to do NDI, you need an NDI. I'm not going to give you a bunch of other versions of this. If you want to convert NDI to and get it, or convert NDI to SDI or HDMI, you're going to need a converter box, and that Magewell makes a lot. The ones that I use, but there's a lot of other ones that are out there. BirdDog makes them. David Brady said BirdDog Play, Apple TV with Sienna NDI receiver. Magewells are the ones that he uses. So you need an NDI and they're all kind of, the ballpark is all going to be in the $300 to $600 range for each signal.
And how are you going to get the wireless signal from the phone that is going over HX into your net? Would it just connect to your local area network via NDI HX, and then you access
you'd have to have
some intermediate computer
on a router and a Wi-Fi. I mean, it all sounds like something that wouldn't work very well, but it would be a phone getting onto a wireless network that's also on the network with the NDI solution, and then that NDI solution would be somewhere plumbing it back out. I wouldn't use that in a real production, but if you're messing around, sure. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. Here on the panel, could CloudDuplicateFinder.com be the best program to find and eliminate not only Google Photos, but Google Drive and iPhoto duplicates? And he has a link there for CloudDuplicateFinder.com.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it's just an ongoing search. I really want to find a program that will do this. This looks promising, but I'm not there yet. I'm still trying to find a way to eliminate duplicates on Google Cloud and on Apple Cloud.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, I was curious why you want to do that, because usually cloud duplicates are your form of backup, and you'd be eliminating your form of backup if they're duplicates of ones you have locally or duplicates between iCloud and Google's Photos. I don't know why you want to eliminate those duplicates, because they serve as a backup. And if they're using too much storage, I understand, though.
No, they're duplicates on Google itself.
I see. So you have two copies of the same photo in Google Photos in the cloud.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you would have to be careful on the scope of that so that you don't cross-link the scope. So it's looking for duplicates on your computer and the cloud as well. Yeah.
Next question.
Next one comes from George P. Purdell, and he said, long-time listener, first-time poster. So welcome, George. The question is, much like the discussion between phase and polarity in audio, how about tackling the Podium versus Lecter nomenclature?
Let's do this relatively quickly, but we should address it. Go ahead, Mark.
So a podium is what you stand on. It raises you up. A lectern is what you stand behind, and it's meant for holding papers that you are going to read from. Both words are from Latin.
So if you don't stand behind a podium, you stand on a podium. You stand behind a lectern, not on. Right. You can stand on a lectern, but we don't recommend it for most lecterns.
It makes you very tall and very tough.
Especially if you're slanted.
Yeah, and if it's glass. Go ahead, Bill.
And just to fill the last piece in, and a pulpit is something that is enclosed at least partially. So those are the three that people get confused all the time and mess them up.
And you can, in case you're wondering, have a podium on a stage. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, they are frequently confused. Yeah, the podium. A pulpit is a combination of a podium and a lectern.
It's a hybrid.
Next question.
Next question comes from Tommy Schatz in St. Paul, Minnesota. Does anyone have experience using AT&T Internet Air? My concern is latency, as they say cell phones take priority. I'm close to a 5G tower, so that shouldn't be an issue. No fiber where Tommy is.
Yeah, I mean, it might work. I can't imagine it being cost effective, but maybe. So, yeah, let us know if you do it. Let us know how that works for you. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Pedro Hernandez Belo in Puerto Rico. Hey, Alex, what mic are you using, and is there any processing?
So I changed it between yesterday and today, or last night and today. I am using a Shure SM7B. There's no processing. It was a Neumann TLM 102 yesterday. I'm experimenting. I got these mics for Michael Krasny's show, and and Mickey pointed out that you are hearing me through audio processing in the audio office hours pipeline. I'm not doing any processing. So this is I need to know how the mic works and because I'm using it for the podcast. And so I decided I better put it into play because I need to use it there. So anyway, so that's what we're doing now. So you'll have to tell me whether you like this one more than the other one, as far as how it sounds. Go ahead, Courtney.
I like this one better.
Thank you. It's expensive mic, but they're both expensive mics. But I was like, I put off buying this one for a while, but they're pretty standard. And I also realized that if I wear a dark shirt, it's less noticeable. So it's there. So anyway, and it says, Mickey said, not for flattering your voice, it's not as smooth as the X2, which is what Courtney uses. I am trying to move away in my room from a large dynamic mic because my next design may have more surfaces, and so I am trying to look for something that has more off-axis rejection. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael up next. The new Shure Axient Digital PSM IEM in-ear monitor system supports optional AES 256 encryption. When would you need encrypted wireless mics or in-ear monitors?
Go ahead, Courtney.
If you're doing anything in a public stage or in a place where it could be eavesdropped on, there's a lot of crazy paparazzi out there who carry scanners out there that intercept wireless signals so that they can hear behind-the-scenes stuff and record behind-the-scenes stuff. And that's why you would need encrypted audio for wireless mics and in-ear monitors to prevent the world from capturing and recording it and releasing it on the internet.
Next question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York, seeing lots of ads for iFootage's Cobra 3 monopod. Anyone have one?
I don't have one, but I have a friend who has one, and they love it. like just love this tripod. I was actually on a production when this is like what they travel with. I'm trying to find you a great photo that kind of shows you what it does here. Yeah, they couldn't say enough nice things about this. So here's what it looks like. I think this is the one that you're talking about. So the advantage that you have is you have a lot of different options of how you put it together. So this is all one tripod, or one monopod, not multiple ones. So you can have this little soft foot that's there. You can take the top off and put it onto this open foot here. So you have kind of a low ride, or you can open it up and have it be a large monopod as well. So these are all three of these are options from the same monopod. Again, I guess the ones that get more expensive are when you start going into carbon fiber. is going to be more expensive and a lot lighter than the aluminum ones. But they're very, very happy with it. so it's definitely something that I've thought about getting somewhere in the near future. Very stable. A lot of us have used the Manfrotto one. This one seems to have a much larger base and more flexibility. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm always a little leery. Whenever I have something like this, and I've had a couple that have the feet, I take them off almost immediately, and I never use them with that, because I had one circumstance where I got distracted for a moment. I walked away, and sure enough, somebody walked past the monopod and knocked it over, and my camera hit the ground, and I was not happy about that. And I use a monopod differently. I use a monopod a good little bit, particularly with my iPhone, but I use it as kind of a stabilizer. I'm almost always holding it. I love having it because it allows me to get up high, and I can flip it real quick and get down low for the kind of dog's eye view of things. Those shots in an event can be very interesting to give you options in the edit bay. But I just, every time I have put the idea of putting a little foot like that on a monopod, I guess if I was shooting a lot of speakers and I was just in a fixed position and I wanted to do a half hour of somebody talking on stage, yeah, it'd probably help to just not have to hold it. But other than that, I'm not a big fan of feet on monopods. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely used them for that. I do think that this one, I had a chance to play with it a little bit, and it's stable as a lot of tripods that I've used. So, of inexpensive small ones. So it's pretty cool setup to make that work. I wouldn't go very far with it from it when I had an expensive camera there, but it's a pretty slick setup. Thanks so much. That's the end of our Q&A Tuesday morning. We really appreciate everybody's contribution. A quick reminder that we are selling shirts. So if you go to officehours.global/shop, you will see the shirts that we have available to you. Let me see if I can pull those up for you. Office Hours. And it not only is a cool shirt in my opinion, but and it was based on Nick, who's Nick Justishin did something that we saw. I was like, oh, that looks really great. So these are our power up shirts, and they are powering up office hours. And so if you look at it here, this is what they look like. So you've got your kind of your logo in the center with the office hours on the side there. They are 100% cotton. High quality shirts, $20 of the shirt cost goes to office hours. And so it's a good way to donate to office hours and help us keep the lights on, as well as getting a cool shirt out of it. So anyway, these will be on sale through November 20th. And then after that, we don't know when we'll come back to shirts. so it took us 4 years to get to the first one. So it might be a little while. So you might want to buy early, buy often, because I don't know when you'll get another chance. So anyway, check that out. That's officehours.global/shop. Thanks to the producers for all the great questions. Thanks to the panelists. Can't do this without you. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that does all the development work, the management work, the planning work that's there. We really appreciate everybody's contribution to making this whole thing happen. It always takes a village every morning, and you'll see me looking around right now. It's because I to show you the shirt, I got rid of my back end, so now I can't see the miles. I'm trying to run around, try to find the miles. We traveled 24,000 miles today, 39,000 kilometers, and that is 194 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump back into After Hours.
Ooh, do you make those office hour shirts in 3XL?
I think we do 2. I don't know if we do 3.
2XLs? 2XL.
Is it through Cafe Press or one of those? Because I probably haven't.
It's through Fresh Prints. It's we wanted more options with the quality of the shirt.
That made sense.
Yeah,
I wouldn't wear it in a war zone either. It makes a good target.
I'm surprised you didn't elevate the graphic just so that in our framing you needed a small one right below the throat.
You can see it right here. It may the placement of it may be very, very close to a popular movie. maybe exactly. So anyway, all right. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.